The aide told my grandmother she hoped she'd die in her sleep, and I just smiled. I visited my grandmother at her nursing home last Tuesday after my mom called me in tears. Grandma had lost almost 30 pounds and kept saying the staff was stealing from her and hurting her. My mom thought the dementia was making her paranoid, but she wanted me to confirm because I work as a social worker specializing in elder abuse cases. When I walked into Grandma's room, 2 aides were roughly changing her sheets while my grandmother whimpered. They smiled at me and said in English that she'd just been fed and bathed. I thanked them and sat down. The second they thought I was distracted, one aide muttered to the other in Spanish, "This is the granddaughter who never visits. She won't notice we've been selling the old lady's pain medication." The other one laughed and replied in Spanish, "Good, I need the money. This one complains too much anyway. Maybe if we skip a few more doses, she'll finally shut up for good." I kept my face neutral and pulled out my phone like I was texting. I opened my voice recording app and set it face down on the table. The aides kept talking in Spanish in front of me like I was furniture. One said, "Did you take her wedding ring yet? The dementia patients never remember what they own." The other replied, "I sold it last week for $800 and told her she lost it." They both laughed. I watched my grandmother try to lift her head and one aide shoved her back down hard. She said in Spanish, "Stay down, you disgusting old corpse. You smell like death and I'm done pretending to care." 3 more aides came through over the next hour and every one of them spoke freely in Spanish. One told another, "The guy in 247 keeps begging for his medication, but I've been selling it. If he dies, he dies. Not my problem." Another aide was bragging about a diabetic patient and said in Spanish, "I switched her insulin dose with saline yesterday because she complained about me to her daughter. Her sugar went so high she was hallucinating, but I told the nurse she must have snuck candy from another room." A third aide mentioned my grandmother specifically and said, "This rotten hag presses the call button 6 times a night to use the bathroom. I ignore it completely. Let her sit in her own filth." When they finally cleared out, my grandmother grabbed my hand with her skeletal fingers and whispered, "Please believe me." They twist my arms behind my back when I ask for help. They tell me I'm losing my mind and no one will ever believe me over them. Tears were running down her face and I could see the finger-shaped bruises and actual scratches on both her forearms. She told me they left her stranded on the toilet for 90 minutes 2 days ago because they were watching videos on their phones in the break room. She said one aide slapped her across the face last week when she asked for water. She whispered they'd stolen her late husband's watch, her mother's pearl necklace, and over $3,000 in cash. They tried to tell her our family had already taken those things because we were greedy and didn't love her anymore. The 2 original aides came back in to take her blood pressure. One roughly grabbed my grandmother's arm and she cried out. The aide said in Spanish, "Shut your mouth, you pathetic old hag. You're fine." The other one looked at my grandmother with pure disgust and said in Spanish, "I pray every shift that you choke in your sleep so I never have to touch your disgusting skin again. You've lived way too long already." The first aide laughed and added in Spanish, "The second this worthless bitch finally stops breathing, I'm ripping those diamond earrings right out of her ears. They're worth at least $2,000 and she sure as hell won't need them rotting in the ground." That's when I stood up and looked both of them in their eyes. I said in perfect Spanish, "My grandmother is not a hag and those earrings belong to my great-grandmother who survived the Holocaust." Their faces drained completely white and one stumbled backwards so hard she hit the wall. I continued in Spanish, keeping my voice cold. "I'm a licensed social worker specializing in elder abuse. I've recorded every word you've said for the past 90 minutes. I have you on tape admitting to theft, medication, tampering, physical abuse, and fraud." I held up my phone. The taller aide started crying and begging, but I spoke over her in Spanish. "Save it for your lawyer." I switched to English and called the facility director, the police, and the state elder abuse hotline, all while both aides stood there sobbing. The police arrived within 15 minutes and arrested both aides immediately. 4 more staff members were arrested by the end of the day once investigators checked medication logs and financial records.